Everybody, welcome back to the WPC Plus, where we break down Statcast metrics to help fantasy baseball managers, of course, win and make the right decisions in terms of players, who to add, who to drop, who to trade for, and who to just trade away as soon as possible. Today, to talk about contact rate. And Nick, why do you think that that's a good thing to look at? Because contact in and of itself is inherently good, right? You can make really hard contact straight to the shortstop for a ground ball out. What is it about contact rate that we're going to look at specifically that's going to tell us, something in terms of fantasy value?
It's one of those, like you said, it's just because you have a higher contact rate doesn't necessarily mean anything. It can mean a whole lot of bad contact. It can mean a whole lot of singles, which generally aren't going to help the fantasy player. But it can also it's a great context stat, like something you look at in terms of like the bigger picture, and we'll look at we're going to look at a number of guys, but it's like if you see a power hitter that uh, you know always has mass, talking about Joey Gallo, for example, he's always had massive exit velocities, and anything he touches, like it rockets off the bat, or at least before this year. And you look at his, if guys like that, if suddenly they see a big contact, not even a big contact rate like jump, like just a minor one, it's like these guys that can be batting average tanks on your team. That maybe a contact rate can, maybe when you hit the ball really hard, generally hitting it more often is a good thing. And it's not just power hitters. It can be anyone, but it's like it's a good indicator of maybe where batting average can go or where it is going. But it's a context that you look at it in terms of a lot of other things, but it's a good indicator for at least if someone is changing their approach. Like if we'll look at someone later who is having their best year, but their contact rate has actually went way down. It's an approach change, and that approach change is working right now. So it can be instructive in a lot of different ways.
Right. And as always, I think we say this with each and every metric that we evaluate. You can't just take it, in and of itself, right? It's just part of the bigger picture. After you get to the contact part, well, then there's launch angle to play, exit velocity, all that. So today we'll just focus on contact rate. And again, this is 3 up, 3 down. Look at some of the biggest risers, fallers from last season to see who's made some changes. We're not just going to look at the guys who have high contact rates because you know what? Take a guy like David Fletcher, Nick Madrigal. Super high contact rates. They're not moving the needle too much for fantasy. So we're going to look at some more fantasy relevant players that we think are worth exploring. So let's go 3 up. Let's start with the first one, and that would be Matt Olson, who is up in pretty much every imaginable category. If you look at his StatCast page, it is a sea of red, which is glorious sight to behold, especially if you have him on your roster. Now we know the A's just in and of themselves, they're just been going off. At least they were until their winning streak got snapped at what I think it was 13 games. Um, so we'll see if regression hits with him too. So before I ask you, is regression going to hit hard with Matt Olson? Are you buying into the fact that his zone contact rate as of this time was up 9.5% from last year? His chase contact rate up 20 points. So he's making big strides just all across the board. Last season was a really down season for him, so I guess he had nowhere to go but up. But do you think this is a true breakout because he's prime age and he's figured it out? Or is this a small sample thing and a hot streak? You know what I mean? Are you kind of jumping ship here?
No, I'm not jumping ship. I think it's in between those two options, like it usually is, but a little more to the good side. Uh, you know, Matt, he had a 195 batting average last year. Like that was the big sink. And this year he's batting 312 with a 308 xBA. I don't think Matt Olson is going to be a 300 hitter for the entire year, but it wasn't that long. 2019 he batted 267. So it's at least that and possibly more is certainly a possibility. And like we were talking about with the Joey Gallo example, like when you have a power pitcher who hits the ball really really hard, and like you said, you go to his Statcast page and it is a sea of red, like just every category. He's got career highs. Now granted, we are dealing with a different ball this year that, as we've talked about, is suppressing offense and suppressing home runs, but is also bouncier, as it were, and is doing some funky things with exit velocities. So, but even putting that aside, like his numbers are so good that doesn't even, it matters, but it doesn't matter as much because, in a vacuum, it's just they are so large. And so he's hitting ball extremely hard, and his contact rate is 76.7%, which that's that's not crazy high. Like that's kind of middle of the road compared to other people, but up from 68.1% last year, and that big of increase for a power hitter like Olson, especially one that value got sunk last year by a below 200 batting average. Like you got to love to see that, because what the 300 average, like I said, I doubt it's sticking around for the entire season, but whatever. Like, give me the, if you get anything better than the 267 that he batted in 2019, like that is fantasy profit all the way, because we know he's going to hit home runs. Like I think we know that, and even in this weird offensive year that we're having this year, but he's going to hit for some power. He will be fine in the counting stats considering the Oakland A's offense that's around him. If you're an Olson owner now, you don't have to worry about, like, that was the big question. Like, can he, like, surely he's not going to bat 200 again, right? And it's early, but it seems like at least that question has been answered. Like he's not new Joey Gallo, he's not new Gary Sanchez. Like it seems to be he's going back to the last time we had a full season of baseball.
Yeah, he's not going to bat 200. He's going to bat 300. No, he's not going to bat 300. I mean, we can't really expect that. But look, even if he ends up exactly at 267 this year, I think anyone who drafted him is happy with that, because he's going yard at
Oh yeah.
least 30 times, if not 40. So, I mean, he's already pretty well on his way. So, yeah, I think we have to buy
Anyone
into
that
it.
drafted him would take that,
Oh,
guaranteed. If you told him right now, you're like, you want 267 for the rest of the year? Yeah, they take it, and they take their profit.
take
So
it.
if that's like the floor ish, like if it can be at least there, like that's a profit play.
Because you drafted him with low expectations on batting average based on last
Yeah.
year, most likely. So yeah, definitely. I would just say if somebody's fully buying in, they think that he's going to have an explosion, this monster year based on what's just happened the last 2 weeks. I don't mind selling him just because regression is about to hit, since he's not a 300 hitter. I think that we're going to see a slump at some point, but yeah, based on where you drafted him, you're probably not going to get anything better in return. So let's go to our next riser, and that's going to be Omar Narvaez. Really? We're going to talk about a catcher. Okay, well, Omar Narvaez is one of the biggest jumpers in contact rate. He's doing pretty well at the plate. Last I checked, he was batting 379. Is that right? Is this right? Okay. Are we interested I mean, we need a catcher at some point, right? This guy was kind of forgotten about too after last year. There's a lot of catchers kind of on fire to begin the season, but this is a guy that we should buy into, because I'm really not buying a whole lot of Milwaukee's offense these days.
Yeah, what everyone expected. The year of the catcher. Like, we've had actually some catchers be not horrible to start the year, particularly in batting average, which is just crazy to see. But yeah, like you said, Narvaez batting 379. Wow, that's backed by a 364 XBA. So it's not like this is an illusion. He's got a 445 WOBA, a 433 XWOBA. Uh, all right, like he had, like, going back a couple years, like there was a brief like 3/4 of a year where people were excited about Omar Narvaez for Seattle, and then they were not excited, and he was terrible last year. So his contact rate, like you said, it's like one of the biggest increases going. It's 86.6%, which is uh, well above average, and especially for a catcher. I mean, he was at 73% last year. That's generally the range catchers like to live, but he's kind of done this. Like when he was good for Seattle, he had an 80% uh, contact rate, which is down from what it is this year, but it's he at least has that ability to make contact and make good contact, and is doing it right now. And I don't like the Brewers offense either, but Narvaez is batting in the middle of it and is contributing in a couple of different ways. Like obviously the batting average is going to come down, and like you said, like the Brewers offense is kind of a mess, but it seems to be his batting order isn't. He's going to bat fourth or fifth now for the conceivable time going forward, and at catcher, man, you'll take good ones anywhere you can. And looking at the Fangraphs auction calculator, he's the number 6 catcher right now by value. So for a guy that basically wasn't being drafted early at all, this is quite a boon.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if there's something good about the fact that Yelich is hurt and Kane is hurt and Hira is sucking, and uh,
Terrible.
I mean, I don't know how else to say it, but I mean, I guess that leads to a better spot in the lineup for him. Narvaez can actually drive in
Yeah.
runs. He doesn't have to bat eighth. I kind of said, really not half joking at all, the other day, like the only person I'm even interested in Milwaukee lineup is Travis Shaw, which I didn't think I'd be saying this year. But I guess we have to add Narvaez to the mix there. Fantasy viable catcher is always worth noting. And then let's go to an offense that, well, not doing a whole lot better, but Colorado, it's kind of a mess there. But I've always been a fan of Raimel Tapia, and not because of the power, because that's not his game, right? There's plenty of guys there in Colorado who can go yard while tanking your average. Like Ryan McMahon, for example, comes to mind. But Tapia is a guy who, he bases his game on contact. He has a nice sprint speed. He's finally kind of increased the launch angle. He actually has gone deep, I think 3 times so far. But his contact rate has gone up now 10% since you talk about 2019 and 2020 combined, because his last year was kind of a not even half season. It's up 10 points to 87.6%. So he's making good contact. He's got the speed, and now he's adding just a little bit of pop. If he can keep stealing more bases, right? He doesn't have quite enough for my taste. This is a guy I kind of like, as kind of a, I want to say 5 category contributor, modest 5 category contributor that you can kind of plug in your lineup.
Yeah, I mean, he's looking at auction values. He's a top 90 hitter right now. Uh, Pretty good. Got a 321 average, 288 XBA. So, or I'm sorry, he's got a 288 average with 270 XBA. So, like you said, kind of a 5 category contributor. It has excellent speed. Doesn't have the stolen bases yet. Uh, he kind of started this last year. Like he had a 75% contact rate in 2019, and then last year is up to 83.4, and this year up to 87.4. Like I like those continued increases, and kind of same thing on his contact rate inside the zone. 81% in 2019, up to 90% last year, 91% this year. So, you like to see people that when they are swinging at pitches in the zone, they are making contact, and so that's a nice indicator as well. So yeah, and I mean he plays in Colorado, so that never hurts. He has an assured leadoff spot. Once again, doesn't hurt. So I think I think the average is probably going to come down a little bit. His WOBA isn't anything special. He's got like a 340 WOBA, but only a 302 x WOBA. So it's like average WOBA, and it looks like maybe some regression coming back that way. But as far as fantasy value wise goes, like it, that doesn't matter as much because for one, he's getting to plate appearances from batting at the top of the order and half the time in Colorado. And for two, like once he's got good value now, but once that speed comes along a little bit too, which I'm fairly certain that it will kick back up to what he normally steals. Like that's a really solid not overwhelming 5 category contributor, but like above average. Like I like guys like that. They're giving me a little bit of something, and it doesn't have to be superstar levels, but poor man's version of like a 5 category superstar.
Yeah, well, what I like is the floor, right? This guy is going to hit for average, and hitting in Colorado doesn't quite excite you the way it used to, but still, I think the fact that he's hitting leadoff, that's what's exciting. Is he's going to score runs. He should get the green light more often. Let's get that going, Bud Black. And as soon as Trevor Story gets traded, then they'll have to manufacture runs anyway, so he'll just be running wild. That's
Yeah, ain't that the truth?
yeah,
Pour one out for Nick Mariano. It's just
yeah.
uh,
Sorry,
his,
Mariano, but
his poor story is just left in Colorado jail, just looking around like, uh,
it's
at least
just a
they got
matter
rid of
of
British.
when, not if. All right,
Yeah.
let's get to the downside of things. That's our 3 up, now 3 down. You kind of hinted at this earlier, guy that looks like he might be a breakout performer, if I can use that term this early. But here's what's crazy. We're talking about the downside. This is one of the biggest fallers in contact. In fact, the second biggest faller on in zone contact from last season. And yet he's right now ripping it up in fantasy. That's Nick Solak of the Rangers. Also qualifies at second base, which is a very thin position these days. So,
Mm-hmm.
what is it we like about Solak besides the fact he's hitting home runs and stealing bases?
Yeah. So like breakout Solak season. He's going by auction calculator values, he is the number 9 hitter, the number 1 second baseman, number 9 hitter, has a 307. He has good stats that are backed by good X stats. The 307 batting average, a 297 xBA, a 414 WOBA, a 391 x WOBA. But like you said, it's not because he's making more contact. He he was like a 80% contact guy in 2019, 82% in 2020, and all the way down to 71% this year. And like you said, one of the biggest fallers on in zone contact. He had a 91.7% in zone contact rate last year. It is down to 77.8% this year. His out of zone contact is down by just like a couple of points, but swinging strike rate also massive jump. Like he was like an 8% guy the past couple years, and this year he's up to 13%. So he is whiffing more, making less contact in the zone, and yet is having his most successful season with excellent stats that are backed up by their expected stats on Statcast. So go ahead and figure that one out.
Go figure. Well, that's why we dive into these things because again, you can just look at his contact rate's down, he's a bum. No, that's not how it works. And I mentioned earlier, I'm going to dive more into this, my article, and that of course, the first name that comes to mind, which we're not going over because we talked about him already in a previous episode and probably written too much about, is Javier Baez, who is basically striking out before he even gets to the plate. Right, he's just swinging away. He refuses to take a walk, right? He will not let the pitcher throw a ball. And
Yeah.
having a great season for fantasy. He's in home runs. He's among the stolen base leaders. Batting average not so much, but still, yeah, you'll take that trade off. So Nick Solak, not quite to that extreme, but it's just crazy to see that his in zone contact rate, which was pretty good, over 90%, and all of a sudden it's down, and he's just he doesn't care. He's having a great year, which I should have mentioned
That's
this
usually
earlier.
a bad thing. Like,
It's
like
supposed to be a
if you
bad
can't
thing.
make contact. Yeah. Like,
Now, I actually probably should have said this up front, but we talk about these averages. So the league average contact rate, just contact rate in general, is about 75%. In zone contact rate is 82.2%. And then the chase contact rate is 58.2%. So we talk about 82.2. He was well above, Solak talking about, well
yeah.
above, about 10 points above league average. And now he's below league average there.
Well,
Um,
and to well below. Like that's and is far like it's a funky profile. And yeah, I've been doing some digging into him, and it's a really interesting profile. So I and that's the thing. It's like it's not putting me off him. Like I do kind of. Uh, Vlad Sedler was talking about on Twitter last night about how like he knows it was April, but he's going to go ahead and take the L on Nick Solak because it's like you know you look at all these things that should be bad, but you see the performance on your field and you're like it doesn't look like an illusion. Like he is making excellent contact and like doing damage. So it's just like all right, Solak, like you're using your hitting voodoo and you have found something that works. And so, yeah, I'm going to believe it until I see it stop.
Yeah, so you know what? Less overall contact, but higher quality of contact. You know what? Maybe it's all
Yeah.
about quality, not quantity. Maybe that's a life lesson for his kids. All right.
Yes, it's very wise.
Yeah. See, you can learn. We can all learn from Nick Solak. All right. Andrew McCutchen, not doing good. Uh, but here's what's another kind of curious case. So you look at, for example, chase rate, right? His chase rate is 96th percentile, which is good. It means he's not chasing, right? Not swinging at bad pitches. But his chase contact is down by a massive amount. So when he is chasing, he's not hitting it. His walk rate is at a career best, 17.5%. That's also 96th percentile. So he's showing great plate discipline. And it doesn't matter because his XBA is 234. His in zone contact is also way down. He's way down in both in and out of zone contact. He's just not really putting a lot of wood on the ball. So he's being more patient, maybe too patient. We also have to worry maybe age is a factor here. We're maybe seeing some decline in the batting eye, but is it too early to give up on a former MVP like Kutch?
Man, I don't think, I mean, it's too early to give up on most people. So I'm not like giving up on him, but man, these are some disturbing trends if they are trends, which it's easier to think of them as trends when you're dealing with an older player because you're like, okay, so is this the cliff? Is this the is not everything is a slow, gentle decline for major leaguers as they waltz into the twilight of their career. Sometimes it gets ugly in a hurry. And looking at his contact rates, like that's not good. Like going from 81% to 70%. And, like you're saying with, maybe too patient or maybe just can't handle it anymore. And not it like as the game, but just as far as like velocity and, the bat speed is going. And he just can't make that contact anymore because, you know, going, going from an 88% in zone contact to 81% once again, not as low as Solak still, but still really, really low. And his swing strike rate is up, and he's never had like a high swing strike rate, and now it's 11%. So there's a lot of flags here. So I'm not bailing on him if I'm McCutchen, like just rage dropping him, but I'm worried.
I'm definitely worried. I've kind of been off of him since last year just because I kind of see
Yeah,
the cliff coming. I didn't think it was going to happen for sure last year, but I, I'm more than worried. I mean, he's rosterable in a points league just because he is walking so much and because,
yeah,
he might get some counting stats, but man, you have to just be ready. Just have your finger on the trigger and be ready to push that drop button because
Yeah, don't keep taking that L. Like that's a lot of things on a lot of. I've been talking this with a couple different people lately. Like, man, like you don't have to keep taking that L. Like you don't have to keep starting him. Like you don't have to drop him, but you don't have to keep starting him because he's Andrew McCutchen, and you drafted him wherever you drafted him. Like, no, like this isn't sunk value. Like you don't have to keep digging that hole. And like I'm on older players. I'm always trying to not be a year too. Like I'd rather be a year too early on being off him than be a year too late. And like you said, I was kind of done. I don't have a share of him anywhere, and it's just there's too many things of like injuries and this and that, and it's just I didn't. His draft price was still too high, and I didn't want to be left holding the bag. So you don't have to start like sit him on the pine for a while and see if he can pull out of this. But early returns are not good for old Cooch.
And I'll just say that think about this: what's the worst that could happen if you move off of him, you bench him, you drop him? What are you going to miss
Yeah,
out? I
like
mean, he's not really stealing bases anymore, so you're not losing out on
yeah,
that precious commodity. Is he really going to go on a power binge? I mean, maybe a few home runs a week, but I mean, you're not missing out on too much. So, I'll tell you when I learned that lesson about moving off veterans when it's time. Who taught me that lesson was Brett Boone. I remember the year where all of a sudden he went from like great, like one of the best second basemen in the league the previous year to like within a matter of a month, like he was DFA'd. I'm like, okay, what
done.
happened?
Yeah,
Like, okay,
like yeah, man, once that bat speed goes with major leaguers, like it's things can get like there are some people that have the gentle decline, and I think we're going to see more of that. It's just advancement in training and whatnot. Goes on, but man, when you lose the bat speed, it's things can get ugly real fast, especially in today's game when pitchers are so good that they're thinking about moving back the mound and everybody throws 100, and Jacob DeGrom just keeps like adding velocity and new pitches, and like what are you supposed to do for that?
yeah, he could be pitching it from second base bag and it wouldn't matter. Like he'd still be unhittable.
It still wouldn't matter. They're moving
Wouldn't
back to
matter.
120 feet. DeGrom just like, fine, I'll throw 104.
All right, not to end on a sour note. Well, we do have one more faller. This one I think might have a happier ending, but Cavan Biggio, who still has plenty of career left ahead of him, uh, but not really living up to expectations, especially draft expectations. I think there were a lot of people kind of sounding the alarm that he might be overvalued, just because he really wasn't going to be play for a high batting average. Maybe he wasn't going to steal as many bases as we thought. But anyways, as of right now, he's 75.8% in zone contact rate, and it's looking down from last year. Still early, the Blue Jays have kind of been shuffling pieces around. Teoscar Hernandez has been out, the COVID list. George Springer hasn't even played yet. So there's been a lot of moving pieces here. But what's your take on Biggio after what we've seen so far this year?
Trouble. Uh, I wasn't very in on him coming into this year. You mentioned earlier this year that second baseman a shaky position. I hated second base coming into this year. I thought it was going to be a very weak position, which is why I took my favorite Kettle Marte like everywhere, and we're seeing how well that's working out after that amazing first week of performance before injury. But Biggio is man, they like eh, once again a lot of flags here that aren't great. Like obviously he's a young player, but contact rate way down, like down 11 points to from 78% to 67%. And you already mentioned the end zone contact rate and his swinging strike rate, which 8.7% in 2019, 7.8% last year, 14.4% this year. Like that's not just bad, like that's no, it's not just like bad in terms of like increase. That's bad in just terms of like that's a that's a higher level swinging strike rate. And batting average is a bust at 210 with a 164 XBA. So his XBA is even worse. 305 WOBA, 253 XWOBA. Like bad WOBA, even worse XWOBA. And like one of the big reasons I didn't like, I've never been that in on him, is because I always thought there was like a lurking splits problem. And it's really shown up this year. He, once again, very tiny sample, especially versus left-handers. But versus left-handers, he's got like a 063 average versus a 261 versus right-hander. And looking at, WRC plus -28 versus left-handers, 136 versus right-handers. So he is really struggling versus lefties, and that's a problem that's kind of been getting worse. And now his contact rate is getting worse, and that uh, it's even more kind of troublesome, not just like from the actual stats, but from the fact that, like you said, a lot of shuffling pieces in on the Jays, but a lot of talent and a lot of talent that is fighting for those top spots. So where is Cavan Biggio going? Once everyone comes back healthy, once Springer and Hernandez and obviously Bichette and Vlad and Marcus Semien. So where's Cavan Biggio going to bat? Because coming into this year, he was being drafted like a person who was going to bat second most of the time. Uh, and then the Springer signing and the Semien signing, and all of a sudden, like he's he's moving, looking kind of square in the face, like a closer to the bottom third of the order. And like that's a big deal. We've talked about plate appearances a lot, and going from second to sixth or second to seventh, like if that's the way it's going to work sometimes, especially if you have a splits problem versus left-handers, and you're facing a left-hander, maybe you're not getting benched, but you're getting dropped way down in the order. Like that's a lot of bad contributing factors when you add in the fact that he's making way worse and way less contact.
Now, when you put it that way, I'm a lot more worried about Biggio than I was earlier. I
Oh
mean,
no.
luckily, I don't have him in too many places. No, I not. It took me toward the end of draft season to finally figure out, you know what? I'm just going to wait on second base. Like, there's no reason to draft a second baseman earlier. And
Yeah.
that's definitely proving true. Albies, who I think Albies will be fine. He's definitely due for some positive regression, but still, Albies and like I said, Marte hurt and Biggio. But look, so here's the bottom line: you drafted Biggio to be a starter, either at second or third base, wherever you got him. You spent probably a top 60 pick on him. What do you do with him? Are you benching him right now at this point until you see things turn around?
I mean, it kind of depends on your team and I mean, what other options you have, but man, you may not have a better option. Like at the way second base is right now. Like I know that like I'm I I have a lot of Kettle Marte. Like not like overexposure, but I have a number of teams that I'm struggling to find like quality replacement guys. Uh, because it's not Andre Jimenez, for sure. Uh, so no, you may want to bench him, but I don't. A lot of people, you're just probably not going to be able to. But if this continues for that much longer, like if we get into closer into June, and he is still, completely tanking versus left-handers and batting sixth or seventh or whatever, and still batting 210, then I, you're gonna have to make some decisions because right now he is not pulling his weight in any fashion. Looking at Fangraphs auction values, he is the number 35 second baseman, returning negative value at negative 770. Coming in behind such luminaries as Rio Ruiz, David Boat, Rusned, old Rusned
Odor.
Odor,
Wow.
yes, has earned more his limited playing time has contributed more fantasy value than Cavan Biggio. So put that one in your pipe and just drink it, drink it in, Cavan Biggio drafters. I feel bad about like letting you know what's happening.
All right, we're gonna have to talk some people off the ledge here pretty soon. But no, and look, it's not a bad idea if you have the space, right? You have a roster spot. Maybe you temporarily you stream a guy like Cesar Hernandez, who's just kind of a decent, not spectacular. He's not a replacement, right? But he'll get you a decent batting average. He's scoring runs. You at least kind of maintain some of your ratios there and the batting average and some of your stats, and then you see if he turns things around and you dump him. You could do that. I'm not saying to pick up Odor because I wouldn't, but yeah, it's gonna be interesting. That's you.
Well,
You're all about Odor.
now, me and Eric Samolsky,
And Eric.
we will never let that Odor train die. Never. So, but no, well, I'll end on a happy note with you Cavan Biggio owners. At least it's not Castanheira. So you got
Go.
that. Like Biggio's better than Hira. So who's the by auction value is the third worst second baseman, only being beat by Ha-Seong Kim and Tommy La Stella. So well done, Hira owners. I'm sorry about that.
There you go. That's a happy note. No, yeah. The moral of the story is just don't draft a second baseman next year. Just pick
No,
one. You should have
it's hot
drafted Nick
mess.
Solak.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is 3 up, 3 down, of course. Do this every week, talking about some hitters, and also check out our pitcher edition of this, where we talked about CSW. What does it mean? Well, you have to watch to find out. So, talking about contact rate, hit us up if you have a comment. Let us know what do you think, and of course, check out all our work on RotoBaller.com. All right. Thanks for watching.
Thanks.